Let's talk for a moment about the America First policy that's being enacted by the State Department under direction from President Trump. What does that mean exactly? We're not talking about isolationism. We're not talking about America First as in let's take care of our own needs. Let's take care of our own house, make sure our own house is in order before we go out and mess with anybody else's. No, we're talking about going out and messing with other people's countries to make it more advantageous for the United States. I fail to wrap my mind around what exactly it is that makes people think that we can, as Rex Tillerson said, basically ignore our values in order to put our priorities out in front. If our values aren't lined up with our priorities, there is a problem. They aren't really our values, are they? We talk about democracy, we talk about freedom, we talk about human rights, and then we go and we support countries that are obvious violators of all of those things. We meddle in other countries' democracies, and then we complain about them meddling in ours. The United States has a very strong track record of going out and messing with other countries so that American interests should be upheld. Now, what does that mean, American interests? That's not American values. We're talking about primarily financial interests, going all the way back to the 1930s and probably before that. But you remember what happened down in Central America? There are a whole series of basically revolutions that the United States sponsored, and it wasn't simply through behind the scenes. There were actually American troops that went in and helped set up dictators in several Central American countries. We're talking about Nicaragua, we're talking about El Salvador, Guatemala, all these areas down there, specifically to make it a more favorable condition for American businesses down there. Now, that was a policy goal, and the U.S. military was used for it, and it created a wonderful essay, which you have never read before, I highly recommend, called War is a Racket. You should check that out. It's by a general with a great name here, Smedley. This is one of these things where he recognized as a general that he was being used, not only as a tool of violence to advance goals that were against the goals that he was supposed to be defending. And you take that oath to support and defend the Constitution, and then you turn around and you're used as a military tool to go and topple somebody else's Constitution. It ought to cause some kind of conflict in your head. And for Americans to just sit back and say, oh, yeah, America first, yeah. Okay, think about this. How would you feel if some other country started interfering in America in order to be, hey, Russia first, China first, North Korea first? You get where I'm going, right? You want America first? Then focus on America first. Look at some of the problems that we have with homelessness. And now that's not a government problem. It's a people problem. And I think it's exacerbated by the government because people feel like they can hardly contribute financially to anything because they're taxed so much. In some cases, feeding the homeless has been outlawed in this country. I know that there are several cities in America's South, especially Atlanta, I think is one of the big ones, where it's actually against the law to go out there and give food to a homeless person. How are everyday Americans supposed to help take care of the problem if government steps in and says you can't do that without our permission? A number of different issues that are rolled up into this. I just want to boil it down to the one. America first really needs to get America out of these other countries, not going into these other countries to put our preferences and our interests ahead of theirs. That's my 2 cents. Love to engage you on the topic. Feel free to give me a call on the call-in line, which you'll see a link to on the main page at radiofreespeech.com, or send me an email, steve@radiofreespeech.com. Thanks.